My name is Andreas Schabert. I'm with the brandpack design agency based in Hamburg. We do classic brand design for packaging, but we also have a strong engineering pillar all about selecting shapes, selecting materials, developing new concepts for packagings, for brands, and also in 3D visualization. Seeing as we are very active in these fields, we are always interested in learning about what new things come up, not just in terms of graphical design, but also in terms of materials. So today I would like to tell you a little more about new trends that we have identified with regard to sustainability and new opportunities that have opened up because we've started looking into new technologies and new materials. Discussing packaging in general, say, okay, packaging, everything is just about sustainability. Is that true? Yes, sure, a lot is about sustainability. But if companies are really committed to achieve sustainability, they open up new opportunities to create new packagings, to create a new brand presentation, to support brand equity. So we should actually try to bring in all those new innovations into our brand strategy to make us fit for the future and create new opportunities. We call this entire thing circular design because we assume that we take shapes, graphical design or materials. Sure. First of all, when picking a new material, we have to think about what happens to it at the end of the life cycle, like after the consumer use the product and has to dispose of the product. What happens in the recycling circle? So during the last couple of years, this is something we've strongly focused on because we have to learn about what happens if I reuse the material, especially when we talk about PCR materials that have been recycled, reusing those materials, but also bringing back virgin materials into the circle. So the end-of-life discussion is something we've strongly focused on, and it's something we should actually look at before we even get started and not just consider it once the product is to be disposed of. So I'm going to discuss new systems, new materials, new shapes, new touch and feel, what it means for graphical design and finishing, and I will also focus on circulution. So let's maybe get started with materials. One big issue in the field of materials that has strongly been debated, materials as such don't have a huge impact on the design as such, but it has a huge impact on technology. Because when we're discussing carbon dioxide, we can actually convert carbon dioxide into polymers and return it into plastic materials. So we can produce crude oil-free plastic materials, but customers don't see that. It's not visible for them. So it's very important to communicate that, what kind of raw materials we use and what we do in the background, because the raw material looks exactly the same. It can be recycled exactly the same way as the plastic materials we would like to replace, but it's free from crude oil and it's based on carbon dioxide. L'Oreal and a Swiss company have issued the first pilot projects because they think it's a very promising technology, and we have to communicate that to customers accordingly. If we want to make these efforts visible, or on the other hand, if we have materials that are clearly recognizable and recognizably different, Sulapak, for example, it's from Finland, it's bio-based, and can again be returned into a biodegradability circle. So this is a paper recycling cycle. It's fiber-based, so we can return it to paper recycling. So we can actually dispose of it with waste paper. The texture is totally different. The look and feel is totally different. The weight is different. It sounds differently. So for example, if we create pots from it, we have to think about materiality, we have to think about pigmentation, so that we can actually show, okay, this is a different type of material. It's not about hiding these new materials and actually making them look just exactly the same way as the previous plastic materials looked like. No, we want to present that they're different. One example of that is we were discussing food waste very recently. So we try to bring those materials into the biomanagement circle. So we have a lot of excess production, we have a lot of waste production. Virgin materials that were never used, but still we produce new materials all the time, so we can reuse them. We can use textile fibers, for example, to mix them. Everyone knows so that we have an abundance of textile materials and they make for a huge proportion of our waste streams, and we can use those fibers and mix them in and mix them with virgin plastic materials, which will add to a very special outer appearance. Each and every packaging will be different, so materiality is very charming here. It's a very charming characteristic. Of course, it has to be good fit for the brand and for the product as such. Let's maybe discuss fiber-based materials. I think everyone knows like our egg cartons that we used, and it's like pressed paper. It has a very special texture. It has a very special look and feel. And we advanced that technology. We now use injection molding, so we can produce molds. We can produce very special textures that seem very precious and very elegant. This is, for example, used for champagne packaging here. So you don't have a folding carton, but you actually have a fiber-based basic material with a very unique shape, with a very unique texture, and this helps to support brand equity here. Another material that we've seen very recently is mycelium. It's fungal material, so you actually grow fungal material. You can mix it with agricultural waste to produce those molds. It's a very, very unique type of surface, of look and feel, and it's perfectly suitable for inlays in boxes, for example, for cushioning. It's also suitable for very high-value cosmetic products because it's like a protective packaging with a very special look and gives the impression that it's of very high value because the surface is very gentle, very soft. It's like really like a soft touch material. It's very warm. And actually, you can put it back home and it won't grow anymore. So mycelium growth has been stopped at some point. It won't grow any further. So it's an excellent material to use in this field. Talking of natural materials, we've also seen different kinds of developments. We've seen Peptic, which is a cellulose fiber-based system, which was supposed to replace plastic bags in Finland. So they recognize that the softness of this material is suitable to create certain bag systems, like for promotion, for advertising. It's printable, you can print on it, you can seal it, you can create unique materiality, so you can actually support your own brand presentation using these kinds of materials. Next, there is this large field of folding cartons, folding boxes, paperboard in general. So we try to bring in mixtures with other fibers, for example, silphium, which is a very fast-growing plant. It's very popular right now. You can grow it in Germany, you can grow it in Europe, and you can mix it in with paperboard, a certain percentage of silphium fiber, which adds to the outer appearance, which adds to the feel of the packaging. There are different versions. You probably all know grass paper. There has been some debate about that, whether it's useful to use or not. So a certain percentage of grass paper in the Netherlands, for example, there were efforts to use tulip waste to mix into paper, hemp, tomato stems, for example. So what's the nice thing for us as designer is this is not just about optimizing, for example, our carbon footprint, but we also have some great visual design, and it's a completely colored cardboard. For example, if you use cardboard that is white and you cut it, you will see at the cutting edge that it's white. But this is the grade of paperboard that is completely colored, has a color of its own. And we all have heard a lot about colors and the new trends here. So the cutting edges will also be in the same color, so it's a far higher value. If you use these kinds of materials for your folding boxes, and there are different grades, food grade, cosmetics, you can find these grades of cardboard and paperboard in all those areas. Discussing materials, we of course have to discuss shapes and touch and feel. And one thing that's very important to us is we want to make sure that new materials with their special look and feel are also reflected in the shapes that we choose. So if I have a certain material like PCR materials, for example, recycled plastic materials, that have a very interesting surface, not just in terms of color, but also in terms of surface quality that is very soft, very gentle, a matte surface. And we will use the shape for visual design because then the shape will actually underline the materials that we've used. And this is something we've done a lot of research into. We would like to combine shapes and materials and create some harmony for a harmonious overall concept for the brand at hand. Something we've been looking into is that we can also create the inlay of the boxes. Like, for example, in the field of confectionery, we had some projects where we said, okay, the inside of the box, unboxing as such, is something that's way more important. So, for example, if you open up the folding box, if you open up the pot, we want to support the unboxing experience by finding new ways to do that. And these novel kinds of materials are perfectly suitable for that. For example, here we used cuts of different grades of paperboard. And what we tried to do is find a new type of packaging for chocolate candy, for luxury chocolate candy. Normally they come in high-quality boxes with high-quality inlays that are supposed to convey a lot of luxury because of all the finishing technologies used. So we were talking about the injection molding paperboard. So we were thinking, okay, why not imitate the cocoa fruit as it's in its original natural state. So this was a sample project we did. So we tried to find out how does materiality, how does colors work here. If we want to imitate a cocoa fruit, we use the pulp inlay to convey this high value impression, this luxury impression, make it really special. So we worked with a brand manufacturer. I said, okay, and we were actually listed for an award, and we actually made the finals of the German Sustainability Award because we wanted to show what a vision for the future could be. A lot of technology goes into that for the filling, for manufacturing, but we said, okay, we have to show new options for the future of what we could do. And this kind of packaging design or packaging option perfectly illustrates that new materials will allow us to do completely new shape and a completely new brand representation. We said point of sale, representation, you all know that. You present the pots. Why not also use new materials for the cushioning, which you probably need for new glass jars, for example? Why not try and find a different type of cushioning material which actually embeds your jars and pots that is appealing in its own? So I'll show you an example here. So let's have the pot visible because the pot is what people actually have at home on their shelves. It's important for the brand as such. Why not just have a window in our boxes? But why not use different materials to make this pot visible and not hide it anymore? So at the point of sale, customers will get a hunch of what to expect. I mentioned pulp packagings earlier on. Of course, everyone knows Apple. Their inlays are also made from fiber materials, and Sony did the same. They developed a material of their own, which is also a fiber-based material, which is molded by injection. So it can go into the waste paper cycle and has a very special look and feel. And actually it works. The seams are very nice. It's high value. But basically it's like your basic egg carton. of course using slightly different ingredients, but it's technology that has been evolved in order to use these kinds of materials and turn them into really nice shapes. So this is something, this could replace a folding box, this could be used for transport, this could be used at the point of sale, for example. These materials could be used at all these points, basically. And designing the shape, for example, especially talking about thin-walled bottles, I could realize something like that. For example, I could reduce wall strength in general. I could reduce the amount of material used in order to make disposal easier. So we should definitely look at and optimize disposal options in order to tell our customers, yes, we have thought this through. We've already thought about what we're going to do with the product at the end of its life cycle. Another step that was taken was, okay, what about the shapes as such? In product development, what can we do so that we can reduce the amount of materials to be used, or how can we use different materials? For example, when talking about soap bars, the quality of soap bars has continuously been improved. We now have solid shampoos, we have shower bars, products of a very high quality that don't need any water, which open up new opportunities to support brand presentation. So this is another option of thinking ahead. Why we should not look at the packaging and the product separately, but we should bring this together and think about shape development and product development at the same time, and think about packaging at this stage and try and be creative about it to create new applications and new types of usage. So what does all that have to do with graphical design? So when we're talking new materials, new surfaces, it's printable, but does that mean we only work with very few materials, very few colors? Only in the last presentation, we learned about how important it is to play with colors, to actually use colors. And as we can see here, this doesn't mean that we have to reduce our range of colors and be totally minimalistic about colors. We can use colors, we can be bold, and use certain typography, bring in manual elements, bring in storytelling into our graphical design. Storytelling is a really huge topic, and what we try to do is bring in elements into our graphical design that will perfectly illustrate that this is a different kind of representation, a different kind of packaging compared to what we were used to in the past. So there is significant variety, so a mix of materials and a mix of different graphical designs. We have so many options, we have so much diversity. So the brand message we would like to convey, be it natural cosmetics, be it luxury, be it whatever kind of element we want to have to support the brand, we can do that with sustainable materials. And that's basically my message regarding branding. Maybe we should evolve, we should further develop our brands to become more sustainable, but we can support our brand values with different graphical concepts, different materials, different colors, like completely colored materials, which will definitely enhance our brand presentation. As you can see here, I can see that basically my projector doesn't give you all the contrasts, but this is a very authentic usage of these materials, which allows you to highlight totally different features and to support a new product, because every time you introduce a new product, you want to have some new brand presentation, for example, and you can also use new materials to do just that. What also plays a role here is how can we separate those materials at the end of the life cycle. And some of you will have heard a lot about Holy Grail. There are some companies that have launched initial companies. So this is something that consumers are not even aware of. So this is a code which is incorporated into your graphical design. It's not visible. But the code actually tells you what the packaging consists of, what kind of materials are used here. Is it multi-layer material? Is it mono material? What kind of material is that? So we can actually separate clearly by the different grades of materials, because this is something that's very difficult. It's very difficult to recognize different streams of material and to increase efficiency in the sorting plans. So we use this kind of technology so we can actually prepare that for the sorting machines. And that's also possible to integrate that into the materials as such. So you can actually depict those codes in the pigments as such. So it's not visible for the consumer at all, but sorting machines will be able to recognize that, and it will be easier to streamline these separation processes. So it's difficult if you have large-scale white surfaces. It can be slightly grayish. So actually, we always have to be careful what it means for graphical design. Actually, it's invisible, but if you take a closer look, we still have to watch out that it doesn't get too gray, for example. And as you can see here, at the beginning, right when you get started, you have to start thinking about what are we going to do with the materials at the end of the life cycle and bring it into the initial development in order to support your brand and your brand values. So before I wrap up, I would like to briefly discuss end of life and circulation. So when we're talking closed loop systems, I think there's a lot we can do, and there's one turning point. There are two cycles: the biological cycle, which means those materials that we regrow, like for example biofilms made from regrowable materials, and that can be biodegraded, for example, can be composted, for example. The problem right now, what we're faced with, is this specific cycle. We don't really have that. Of course, some of you will have a compost heap in your garden back at home, and if you know, okay, it's organic material, I can just put it on my compost heap. Of course, there are industrial composting plants that could compost these kinds of materials, but the sorting systems, at least here in Germany and in some other countries too, cannot differentiate between plastic film and organic film. So it will still be incinerated, you know? That's the problem, that's the negative thing about biodegradable materials, organic materials. They would be suitable to be returned into the biological cycle, but it's not possible because of sorting. The technological cycle, on the other hand, is very advanced. So, as I told earlier, this is very exciting. So, if the materials are used as monomaterials, if I have composite materials, on the other hand, it's difficult because it's very hard to separate them nowadays. Monomaterials, on the other hand, can be returned to this cycle, and they can be returned into the new packaging cycle in Hamburg. Some of you may know that. This was a campaign where they said, okay, in Hamburg, from our yellow bag, where we have put recyclables here in Germany, we collect all those monomaterials, all those plastic materials, and then we use those plastic materials taken from our yellow bag. We can produce those bottles. So if you buy this particular bottle in Hamburg, this bottle will actually be produced from plastic materials taken from yellow bags collected in Hamburg. Because people aren't always sure about where their waste materials go, because often they think, oh, okay, it will go to China and be incinerated. So it was a special project where they said, okay, let's separate it, let's collect it. It required huge effort, and disposal companies cooperated with the manufacturer of these bottles and the filling plants. And it was a project realized in cooperation with the university, who actually set up the entire project. And just like retailers were involved. So this was a large group of manufacturers, disposal companies, and the university who worked on this project together. And this is something in the modern day and age, it's not like a very isolated topic, like one single brand looking into their packaging. there are manufacturers, there are raw material suppliers, there are disposal companies or retailers even in between. It wouldn't work to look at this as an isolated topic. So if you think about using new materials, you always should think first, who is part of this overall chain and what impact can we make at what stage of this chain? And they tried to do that here in Hamburg. The project was a great success. Another idea that was also thought up in Hamburg was bringing more glass into cosmetic product packaging. So what they did here, they launched a cosmetics range. They started with disinfectants because disinfectants were like real trendy and much sought after, but also dishwashing liquid, for example. They said, okay, why not take glass bottles for that? And they should not be put into the old glass container, but it should be returned to the normal cycle. So they introduced a reusable system, so you can basically put it in a return deposit machine. Then they will be returned to the manufacturer, will be washed, will be refilled, and returned to the shops. So these are very high quality bottles, glass bottles, but that only worked because they talked to the disposal companies, said, okay, could you collect these bottles for us? They talked to glass manufacturers, said, okay, how laborious is it to return it, to wash it, and to refill it? And they also worked with the filling plants who said, okay, these are the requirements. This is what we need in order to be able to clean it properly and to refill it. So it only worked as a collaborative project because they all worked together. And of course, retailers are also interested in supporting these new systems and to be able to introduce these new concepts into the market. Another system that some of you may have known for quite a while, it's called Loop. It was actually initiated in the United States. So what they tried to do, similar to what they tried with the glass bottles, is, okay, why not create special containers for this brand? Why not develop a unique material that can be cleaned properly, that can be returned to the cycle? So they have long cycle times, and that can also be delivered to your home. So, for example, I buy my ice cream, I buy my deodorant or other daily consumables from Loop, and I will get containers that the products come in, I will use it up at home and then return it to Loop. They will pick it up and I just exchange the product once it's run empty. So it's pre-separated for individual brands, so they have very sophisticated customization, so they really put a lot of thought into how the brand packaging should look. And they started in the US and they now picked it up in Paris, in France. So they launched an initial project trying to see whether consumers will be willing to support that system and would really be willing to return those packagings. Of course, consumers have to be on board. They have to support the process. So they have to show the options that the consumers have, saying, okay, this has to be convenient, this has to be honest and very transparent so that it's clear to the consumers what we do. So I think the times of greenwashing are finally over. So we really have to put a lot of thought into how we can do that properly. Of course, there are many ways of how we can do that, like True Fruits and Innocent. Both are smoothies. One say, okay, we use glass. Our concept is second usage. So you can basically use the True Fruit bottle, for example, for storing your supplies. The others say, okay, I use plastic materials. I use recycled plastic materials because it's lower weight. For both, they have authentic messages. Both communicate honestly what they do. So we as a consumer can make up our own mind what we think is the right way to do it. So it's very important to have the right arguments. It's very important to be authentic when we're thinking about introducing new materials into these cycles. Another startup company called Circolution developed a similar concept, similar to what Loop came up with, saying, okay, why shall we not develop a modular system that we can use, for example, that you can buy at supermarkets? Like, why not try a modular concept? Say, we develop a modular packaging that can be refilled, returned to the store, will be collected at the store, will be returned to the company where they'll be cleaned and refilled. So, is it the right way to have modular packaging, like one and the same shape for different brands? Because differentiating between brands only by means of the pictures on the packaging, like for example, standing in front of our cheese shelves. The cheese shelf, independent of the brand, here in Germany, all the packagings look the same. So there's hardly any difference between different cheese packagings. So a modular system might work very well for cheeses in Germany. But if I want my brand to stand out, this could be an issue. But still, in the field of coffee, they have launched the first returnable packagings, so the consumers can return the packagings to the store and it will be refilled. So very multifunctional in use. So this entire debate regarding circulation, circular design, closed-loop systems have brought up a lot of organizations whose goal it is to bring together all the partners that we need to realize a true circular economy. One of those organizations is Circular Futures. They're a real lab, as they called it, for the circular economy of tomorrow. They try to bring all relevant partners together and try to find new ways, bring in new materials, new options that we have in order to put the circular economy into practice. Because if you're on your own, it's very difficult to make an impact for you as a manufacturer, as a brand, as a producer. Looking at the disposal system, saying, okay, how shall I do this? How shall I make an impact here? So I cannot tell a disposal company, which is based somewhere completely different, how they're supposed to do their job. But still, it's important to be able to separate the materials. So if we want to develop the concepts of tomorrow, I will have to work with all relevant partners in order to be able to make an impact. So other organizations, like the Circular Economy Initiative Germany, they try to set up regulations, try to make recommendations as to which materials can easily be recycled and what manufacturers can do. And they try to come up with ideas to support people in the process of selecting these materials. So their intention is to bring partners together, bring them to the same table to develop joint initiatives. For them, it's not just so much about individual projects, but for them, it's also about providing information. It's an excellent tool if you want to learn more about circular systems, circular economies. The Circular Economy Initiative, which is available for free, it's access for everyone, so it's a great portal to get more information. Because here in Europe, it's not just enough to think about what we do here in Germany. So we have to look out into the other markets where we want to sell our products to. So what about circular management in other countries? What about separation systems in Poland and France? Do they separate materials? And if yes, in what ways? So Resida is a startup that started out by building up a database to provide the knowledge necessary to provide information about disposal systems in other countries. So, for example, if I enter a packaging system into that database, I will know, okay, in France it's separated by materials, in Poland it isn't. Here in Germany, yes, it is separated. Okay, so I can find the information of what the situation is like here in Europe. So they actually compiled all the country-specific regulations and fundamental principles. And both manufacturers and brands can access this database and can use this tool and get that kind of information from it. They also support specific projects, but this is a great option of actually compiling all that information, because if you try and find out about legislation in France and Poland and other companies, it requires a lot of effort. So for us as an agency, that's very, very difficult, and that's exactly what I do, what I specialize in to support us. I think we still have enough time to do that. So circular economy, visions for packaging is also something we've seen in the field of automotive engineering, because they have presented initial visions of how cars should be designed to be able to fully recycle the materials, of how they should be designed in order to be able to return them to such a cycle. So if automotive has successfully done that, I think we in packaging should be able to do that. So I hope my presentation today was an inspiration for you to start thinking about the circular economy earlier and maybe discuss it with your design agency, saying, okay, how can we design our packagings? What kind of materials can we bring in order to create new systems? I would like to thank you very much for your attention. I really like being here today and giving a presentation about these new materials. If you have any questions, please shoot. I don't know if we still have time to take questions, but